Things just got real interesting in the NFC South.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, the part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching our show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in the lineups after you play your first $5 line. The Panthers are back in prime time tonight, headed to the Bay to face off against the San Francisco 49ers, and they have a chance to be in sole possession of first place in the NFC South heading into Thanksgiving on Thursday. Soak it in, because that's what the stakes are tonight in this game for Carolina as they face off against their old friend Christian McCaffrey and the 49ers. But they're going to be without their two starting linebackers. What kind of impact will that have on the game? We'll talk about that a little bit later on. But let's go ahead and just discuss all that happened on Sunday that has led to this momentous occasion for the Panthers potentially tonight as they face off against 49ers in prime time. So as we all know at this point in time, assuming that you watch what happened on Sunday night, or at least have been paying attention to the scores that came out of Sunday's games, the Bucs got just absolutely demolished by the Rams last night in LA, which was not surprising to me. I've been saying for a while now on Locked On NFL, the show I do on Mondays with Tony Wiggins of Locked On Jags, and then even on this show, I mentioned a time or two, I think the Rams are the best team in the NFL. I think the Rams, as long as they're able to stay healthy the rest of the way, will hoist the Lombardi Trophy once again with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford, which does not bode well for the Panthers next Sunday. But those are next Sunday's problems. We are going to focus on right now, the present, and what the task at hand is for this team heading into Monday night against the 49ers. And what the task at hand is them potentially being in sole possession of first place because the Bucs again got their asses handed to them by the Rams on Sunday. And it's not just that happened. Baker Mayfield also got injured in that game. Now, fortunately for Baker, it was his non-throwing shoulder, and he had to still come out of the game, try to play. He was listed as doubtful. Then he was ruled out. He was in a sling. Todd Bowles said after the game, and all the reporting from the NFL insiders is that he's going to have an MRI on his non-throwing shoulder. That's important to recognize that on Monday to see what the severity of the injury is there. Now, just from my non-medical background thoughts here, it's probably for Baker going to be a pain tolerance thing for him the rest of the way. Obviously, even when he drops back and throws the ball, he's using his non-throwing shoulder in that motion. Now, it's not the same motion as him at least throwing the ball, but it's going to be something that's going to impact him the rest of the season, as we're seeing right now with Trevin Wallace, who's dealing with a stinger, and then it maybe became more serious, but he is going to be out again today, and he was out last week. He needed 2 weeks to at least get his shoulder right to feel good again. For Baker, maybe that's what he does, but right now, no further information on how that's going to impact him the rest of the way. But we do know that he is dealing with an injury, and that's something that cannot be ignored as the Panthers and the Bucs go into the final month, kind of and a half of this season. And now looking over at FanDuel, because I'm curious, with this injury and with Carolina and Tampa both tied at 6-5, heading into the final game of Week 12, where do things sit as far as the odds go? They still have the Bucs as minus 360 to win the NFC South, where Carolina is plus 310. And I think in large part because of the fact that the Panthers do have a tougher schedule to close out the rest of the season. Going over to our favorite website, tankathon.com, Carolina has the 5th toughest remaining strength of schedule, and that's counting the game tonight on the road against San Francisco. They count the Rams game next Sunday, home against Seattle, home and away against Tampa. And then the easiest remaining game for Carolina is against New Orleans. Whereas when you look at Tampa, they have the third easiest remaining strength of schedule in the NFL. And for whatever reason, this is crazy to me. They're counting Carolina as an easy opponent because they have it categorized as toughest opponents, easiest opponents. And they're having Carolina twice as an easy opponent. So Tankathon does not respect your football team, y'all. But they have New Orleans, they have Arizona, who I think found a way to still lose that game yesterday against Jackson. They did. They have Atlanta, Miami, and then, of course, home and away against Carolina. So you look at that. The Panthers have already played against the Dolphins, got that win. They've already swept the Falcons. They lost to Arizona. I think that's the team they probably beat at this point in time in the season. They lost to New Orleans. I don't think that's going to happen a second time around. So absolutely far easier road to hoe for Tampa, as they've already gotten all these tough opponents really over the last month out of the way. And now they can kind of cruise to the finish line, potentially based off of where their quarterback, Baker Mayfield, is with his help. But it's not just Baker. It's been a ton of dudes on that team throughout the season for Tampa that have been banged up. And injury luck is one of the most important things when you look at a season. I thought last year the Lions were very clearly the best team in the NFL. They were just embarrassing teams. But then they had Aiden Hutchinson go down. They had Aleem McNeil go down. They had a ton of guys on a defense, especially offensively, who got injured, and they could not overcome that. You look at Tampa, Mike Evans, he's out right now. I would think if he comes back, it will probably be for either the first or the last game against Carolina. Chris Godwin's been injured. He has not looked the same. Luke Gedecke's been out. Bucky Irving's been injured. Jamel Dean, Hassan Reddick, Tristan Wirfs, Kalijah Cansey, now Baker. That's a lot of injuries. The Panthers, they're dealing with them. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and knock on wood, not trying to jinx Carolina at all, but it's not like they're missing their most important players. Like Robert Hunt is the most significant injury they've had so far this season. Obviously, Brady Christensen going down was not ideal for their depth, but he was not a starter. It took a while for him to even get an opportunity to start on the offensive line this season. It's been Robert Hunt. That's it. But they've been able to, again, knock on wood, have Derek Brown, have J.C. Horn, have Bryce Young. You only missed one game. Have Tedero McMillan, have their most important pieces all be out there this season. And it's a war of attrition. And right now, when you look at Carolina, they're winning it when you compare them to Tampa Bay, and now they're tied, and it may be an easier stretch for Tampa at the end of the season, but it's not like New Orleans isn't capable. Even when they had Spencer Rattler before they went to Tyler Shuck, that was still a team that wasn't necessarily getting their doors blown off of them. They've been a competitive team this season. Arizona has been much better with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback than with Kyler Murray. Atlanta, well, it's Atlanta. Miami's kind of looking better. Maybe they can go on a little run here at the end of the season. And then, of course, Tampa's going to have to play Carolina twice. So I don't look at that schedule, especially if Baker misses a game or two, and think that the Bucs just have a cakewalk. Obviously, it's easier than what Carolina has to do, and by a pretty large margin. But, man, Panthers are in a good spot. They're in a really good spot to win this division, which I think is the best way to get to the playoffs this year. Now, looking just at the NFC playoff picture as a whole, heading into tonight, when you look at it, the Rams, number 1 seed, Philadelphia, they're going to win their division easily, even though they did blow that game against Dallas yesterday. They were up 21-0. I turned it off. Thought it was over. It was not over. Chicago's 8-3, which has been one of the stories, probably one of the quieter things that's really not been discussed that much this season. The job that Ben Johnson, the Asheville native, who David Tepper wanted to be the head coach here a couple years ago, what he's been able to do up there with the Bears. Again, Tampa right now, they have the tiebreaker against Carolina because of the win percentage in division games. They're 2-0 in the division. Carolina's 2-1. Seattle 8-3. They have that 5th seed. Green Bay 7-3 rather, with the 6th seed. But looking for the final spot, if you look at it wild card wise, the last spot, I would think the 7th seed. That's going to come down to Carolina, Tampa, San Francisco, who's right now sitting at 7-4, and Dallas, who's 5-5-1. Carolina's already beaten Dallas. They have that tiebreaker. The Lions also are in there. They're 7-4. So that's going to be one to look at as well. So really 5 teams, Tampa, San Francisco, Detroit, Carolina, and Dallas, battling for that final spot, maybe the final 2 spots, depending on how Green Bay plays the rest of the way. So that's why it's very clearly going to be easier for Carolina to make the playoffs by winning the division. And you have that in your hands as you have another divisional game against New Orleans. You have Tampa twice, and of course tonight and against Seattle and the Rams on Sunday to be able to win that division. So I think that the division title is far more in reach than a wild card, which is fine. Because you'd rather play a playoff game at home than be on the road the entire time. And that is absolutely inside for Carolina. And can you believe it? We're sitting here on Monday, November 24th, the week of Thanksgiving, and the Panthers are tied for first place. And by the end of the evening, early Tuesday morning, they could be in sole possession of first place heading into week 13 of this NFL season here in 2025. But they're going to have to do it tonight without both their starting linebackers and their starting center. We'll take a look at the injury report here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, North and South Carolina. Creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Taking a look at the injury report heading into tonight's Monday Night Football contest between the Panthers and the 49ers. We talked about this on Friday. Expectation was that Carolina was going to likely be without their top 2 linebackers in Christian Roseboom and Trevin Wallace. And unfortunately, that is the case as Roseboom, who suffered a hip/hamstring injury last week in the win against Atlanta, will miss tonight. And then Trevin Wallace will be out once again with a shoulder injury that's really bothered him. I want to say going back to that game against Buffalo at home, where everybody seemingly on the Panthers roster was dealing with some sort of injury that afternoon inside Bank of America Stadium. So second straight week, Trevin Wallace will be out with the shoulder injury. I'm guessing a lot of it's just pain tolerance. They want to give him some more time. He got an extra day, but was not able to go, did not practice at all last week. We'll see this week. I don't know how the practice schedule is going to operate with them having one less day and also Thursday being Thanksgiving. I'm guessing they're probably going to practice on Thanksgiving. Obviously, when that situation happens, but you're coming back from the West Coast as well. So that makes even Tuesday kind of weird. So we'll see whenever they're out there this week, how much Wallace is able to do. Same thing with Roseboom, and if those guys can play against the Rams, because I don't think that they're going to be able to beat Los Angeles if both of these players do not play again next Sunday. And obviously, they're going to have a tough time tonight because Christian McCaffrey, we saw it here when he was in Carolina. He's always put linebackers into conflict when running some of those choice routes out of the backfield, kind of choosing depending on how the linebacker is lined up with leverage as far as inside shoulder. He's going to the outside shoulder going to the inside. He's done a great job with those, and he's just obviously a dynamic athlete and one of the best running backs, one of the best offensive players, one of the best players, period, in the NFL. And when you don't have 2 linebackers who Wallace has gotten better this year as he's been in his first full season as a starter. And in Roseboom, he's had his ups and downs, but he's certainly played better over the last couple of weeks. To not have those 2 guys out there, even if they do struggle, according to PFF, in coverage, not ideal in this game, knowing that Kyle Shanahan is one of the best play callers in the league, and he has a weapon like Christian McCaffrey to get the ball to. So that will be a matchup to look at tonight, obviously. So no Roseboom, no Wallace, which means that Claude Sherlis will, for the second straight week, be a starter, and he'll be wearing the green dot, the helmet communications in this game. He had to do that at the end of the game last week, at the end of the fourth quarter. and they're in overtime when Roseboom went out. I asked Clauden about 2 weeks ago, I guess heading into the game against Atlanta, had he ever worn a green dot before? Because Dave was saying, I'm not really sure he's going to wear it. We knew the whole time, obviously, Christian Roseboom, who wore it at the beginning of the season and has experience wearing a green dot, was going to get the green dot last week against Atlanta. But Clauden had said he only had one play of experience ahead of the game last week in Atlanta. Now he's going to have a full week of preparation with the green dot, and he's going to have a full game, provided that he does stay healthy, knock on wood, to be the green dot in this game on Monday. Who will also start? That's going to be something that I don't think we're going to get answered until later today, because Chris Barnes, he's expected to be elevated from the practice squad. Now, looking back at kind of my text, because usually the PR will send us an update, and we did not get a single update yesterday as far as what they're planning on doing. Maybe that will come out later on today as far as what their plans are as far as elevating guys from the practice squad. But Dave Canales did say on Saturday, when he last spoke to the media, that Chris Barnes will be elevated from the practice squad, the veteran linebacker that they signed back during training camp. He'll be elevated. Miami Young Meta, who played 5 snaps last week, he'll be an option. Bam Martin Scott, he's also going to be an option for them. Then Jacoby Windman was somebody that Dave brought up as well, as they signed him to the practice squad in favor of Israel Mukwamu last week. So he could be elevated. He had to make 2 starts last season as well at linebacker. So yeah, it's Claude and Sherrillis, it's Chris Barnes, it's Miami Young Meta, it's Jacoby Windman, it's Bam Martin Scott. Those are the linebackers that you're looking at in this game on Monday against 49ers. So not ideal circumstances, obviously, but they're going to have to get help from everybody else on that defense. The defensive line, they're healthy. The edge rushers, aside from Pat Jones, like, they're healthy. The corners, the safeties, those guys are back, including Lathan Ransom, who practiced all throughout the week, has no injury designation after having surgery on his hand last week after an injury suffered against the Saints. So everybody else on that defense is going to have to find a way to help out those 2 inside linebackers on Monday night. So we'll see if that can play out that way. The wide receiver is also good to go. There was some concern about Xavier Legette with his hip. He said earlier in the week that he felt like he'd be fine to go. Wasn't sure yet. He's good to go. Tedero McMillan was listed with an ankle. He's also good to go as well tonight against San Francisco. And then lastly, Cade Mays is not going to be able to go. That was a surprise, something that popped up later on in the week. Apparently, he injured his ankle on Friday at practice. And you look at the injury report, I'm looking at it right now. For Friday, he was a full participant. So he was up there with the ankle. He was full. Thursday, he's not listed at all on the injury report. And then come Saturday, he's not able to practice, and then he's ruled out. Now, apparently, he had something happen to him. He worked through it throughout the rest of practice, and afterwards he just was not able to bounce back, and they had to shut him down. So Cade Mays will not play tonight, which means Austin Corbett will be back starting at center. Nick Samac will be the backup at center. That's what Dave said on Saturday. And now the Panthers are looking at Ike Ekwonu, Damian Lewis, Austin Corbett, Chandler Zavala, and Taylor Moton as their starting offensive line combination. The 9th different starting offensive line combination in 12 games now for Carolina. That's expectation for tonight, as Cade Mays is unable to go with that ankle injury and Austin Corbett getting the nod. So that's where things stand injury-wise for the Panthers heading into the night against the 49ers. A big opportunity for them to take sole possession of the NFC South. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Game Time in just a couple of taps. I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could see even the exact view for my seat before buying. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Is it safe to say that if I told you that come week 12, the Panthers would be playing on Monday night, and it wouldn't just be a primetime game, it'd be a primetime game where they were tied with Tampa for first place in the NFC South with an opportunity to take sole possession? I'm guessing, had I told you all that back in May or June or August, and hell, maybe even after the first 2 weeks of the season, when I'm sure a lot of you were freaking out after an 0-2 start, I'm guessing a lot of y'all, maybe every single one of you, would have taken that, considering where this organization has been over the last couple of seasons. The last time they were even in the playoff hunt was back in 2022, in large part because of just how bad the NFC South was that season. And they had an opportunity. They were up 14-0 on the road against Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, but Panthers could not hold on that day as they had 3 turnovers that were costly. Mike Evans just absolutely cooking the Panthers secondary that day. Keith Taylor, CJ Henderson, as JC Horn was injured the week prior. And you can always wonder what would have happened had JC been available that day and had Carolina won, who would have been the head coach. We'll never know. But now they sit here in position in the final month plus of the season with an opportunity to host a home playoff game for the first time since 2015, which is crazy to say that. And since the 2015 season, it will be the first time since 2016 on the actual calendar when they did it, and that would still be a decade. So to think that for the first time in a decade, you may be hosting a playoff game, it's wild, because I did not expect that to be the case for this team this year. And you cannot ignore that that is a very distinct possibility for the Panthers this year at where they sit with Tampa, dealing with Baker Mayfield, looking over at Twitter right now. Still no updates from any of the NFL insiders as far as Baker's shoulder injury. Now I'm recording this at 8:55 a.m., but he's going to have an MRI again on that left shoulder, his non-throwing shoulder, and they'll see what the severity of that is. And at least from my thoughts of the situation, that probably he's just going to have to find a way to just take a shot, maybe wear a harness. And if that's good enough for him to go out and play, he'll go out and play. It's going to be probably a pain tolerance kind of thing. Maybe it'll be more than that. We'll see. But either way, like, that's a serious injury. And Tampa's not dealing with just Baker. They're dealing with Mike Evans. They have dealt with Chris Godwin. They've dealt with a lot of guys being banged up throughout the year, where Carolina, fortunately for them, knock on wood, of course, they've had JC Horn. They've had Derek Brown. Those guys have been healthy. Bryce Young's only missed 1 game and is coming off of his best game, where he is also right now dealing with an ankle injury, but he looked great last week with that ankle. So big opportunity for Bryce, big opportunity for Dave Canales, big opportunity for this organization to find a way to announce themselves to the rest of the league. The win against Green Bay was obviously big, but it looks like a complete fluke when you lose the next week to a 1-win Saints team. Then last week, obviously a great day for Bryce Young, kind of confounding after watching how poorly the passing offense had been all throughout the season up until that game on Sunday. And now Ken Bryce followed up on the road against a team that is missing some of their stars in Nick Bosa and in Fred Warner. That's always seeming like a banged up unit there in San Francisco. You got a chance. And really your first real primetime game. And I always thought this was one of the dumbest things that people always brought up was, Kirk Cousins' record in primetime. Guys, playing on Thursday Night Football, whatever. It's not a primetime match. Yes, it's in primetime technically, but it's Thursday night. You're on a short rest. I don't understand why people care about that. Playing week 2 on a Monday night doubleheader like Carolina played a couple of years ago against New Orleans, like, whatever. They gave you the B team. They gave you Chris Fowler, who I love, but he's a college football guy. They didn't give you the number 1 crew. You're actually playing on primetime now. Like Sunday Night Football, that's what I look at as being a true primetime game. When they put you on Sunday night, or depending on what time of the year, on Monday night, those are the games. You have Troy Aikman and Joe Buck calling the game. Like, this is actually like a real primetime game. And when you look also just at the stakes, it feels like primetime. Just because you put a team at 8:20 p.m. on a Monday or on a Thursday or whatever doesn't really mean that, okay, this is like a high stakes game. Tonight is. And let's see how Carolina can handle it, because they have not handled success well throughout this season. They win 3 straight games. They get boat raced at home. They have a great win against Atlanta, at least a dominating win. It's not a great win. I guess any win against Atlanta is great, but the Falcons stink. But they win 30-0 and get boat raced in New England. They beat Green Bay and they lose New Orleans. They have a great win last week. Again, I'm saying great win against Atlanta, but they have a big win last week, coming back from 14 points down, winning in overtime. Bryce Young throwing for a franchise record 448 yards. How do they respond? We have seen when they've gotten knocked down, they pick themselves back up and they responded the next week. But they've never been able to win and handle the expectations that come with it and handle success. So that's the next progression of where things are here in Carolina as far as this turnaround, this rebuild, however you want to describe it. The next progression is going from, okay, yeah, you can bounce back after you get knocked back down, but can you stay up? Can you take that next step forward? And tonight's the opportunity against an opponent that absolutely is gettable. We'll see if they can do it. If they don't, then they're probably going to be 6-7 by the time we have a conversation again next Monday, because I don't see any way in hell they are going to beat the Rams next Sunday. Sorry, don't want to be negative, but I just don't see it happening. But if they can take care of business today, get to 7-5, sole possession of the NFC South, then they have New Orleans still. That's the game you got to win. And if you sweep Tampa, that's 10 wins, and you should be a playoff team no matter what happens against Seattle and what happens against LA. So big time opportunity for Carolina on the road, Monday Night Football against 49ers tonight. We'll see if they can finally take that next step forward here in year 2 of Dave Canales and Dan Morgan. And of course, of Bryce Young there as their quarterback for the 3rd straight year, but his 2nd year under this regime. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I will be back on Wednesday answering your weekly Wednesday mailbag questions. Schedule's going to be kind of weird, so I'm going to try to answer some mailbag questions this week. Either way, at me or DM me over on Twitter and over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions into me following the game tonight. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding. And I'll be back with y'all live on YouTube following the game tonight against the 49ers. I'll talk to y'all then.